Hello and welcome to Nature's Way, part of Tashkeel Talk series. My name is Tيما Ouzden. I'm the Student Engagement Manager at Tashkeel. Today I'm joined by two of our lovely Tashkeel members, غوشيا van Onin and Jamal Bارودي, and we're going to explore how nature manifests itself in artistic practice and also highlight its role in their respective practices. غوشيا van Onin is a multidisciplinary artist, writer, and naturalist. Her practice encompasses themes from natural and man-made environments, landscape evolution, and its connection to technology. Gosha works with perforated acrylic, digital photography, text, video, painting, sculpture, and textiles. She wrote Through the Sense of Color, a comprehensive guide to the natural world of Saudi Arabia, a book consolidating research and images of iconic deserted landscapes, flora, fauna, rocks, and minerals. She's a regular contributor to regional magazines, writing on local art and nature. Welcome, Goshia.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Jamal Bارودي, who is a multidisciplinary artist, designer, and consultant. She established an independent branding studio, Jamjar Design, in 2002, and Art Like This, an independent graphic art studio in 2011, focusing on art and design projects and site-specific installations. Her work has been featured in group exhibitions such as New Beginnings of Thinking is Geometric at Maraya, Islamopolitan at Maraya Art Center, and her first solo, Garden After, took place at 1971 Design Space. She's a fine arts and graphic design graduate of the Lebanese American University and undertook further studies at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. Welcome, Jamal.
Thank you, welcome.
I wanted to start by maybe inviting you, Gosha, first to talk about what role nature plays in your practice and how it manifests and how you connect to it.
It plays, of course, a very important role because basically all my practice revolves around nature. This being in the pristine form, devoid of human stamp on it. Or is it in the form of technology, how the minerals and rocks are being transformed and given different role and transcend into the virtual world? This is basically the core of my current project that is working on binaries, and basically I try to find new narratives, how the basic elements found in nature, for example, in the desert sand, element like silicon, how it transcended into silicon and copper parts of computer industry and transcended into the virtual world, which is right now becoming more and more important than the natural one. However, without nature, we would be lost. For me, nature is very elegant. It's extremely organized. All the natural processes, they have a certain predictability to itself. And even though some elements may look chaotic, after all, after a while, there is a need for organization. And this beautiful organization, even though it seems predictable, it is totally unpredictable. If you, for example, go to the desert and look at the patterns in the sand, you will notice it's hardly, it's almost impossible to find two the same patterns in the sand, which in fact, they are the same element, the same basic form, but then it transforms into multiple variations. So nature is everywhere in my practice, this being in the stone or wood that I use as a material, also in a transformed form in the digital form, CPUs and memory sticks, etc., etc.
I'm curious, do you remember the moment you knew that nature and all its manifestations is going to be kind of central to your practice? Was there a specific moment, or was it always kind of there and you didn't never kind of question it? It felt, instinctive and it had to be there? Or was a specific moment that you knew that it's so interesting and it's so important to you?
As a matter of fact, it has always been there, but I didn't realize the connection. I have quite a wide range of interests. Since my teenage years, I was interested in astronomy, which after a while moved into geology, which is the same thing, only on small scale. This interest and the interest in art and art practice have been always alongside each other. However, I was practicing, I was creating works that were always representing one part or the other. They were never combined. And at a certain point, several years ago, not that long ago, I decided to fuse these two, not to make a kind of dichotomy in my art practice of nature-related art. And then doing something entirely different. I fused the two, and I thought that actually they have been all along in my head, and I somehow found the connection through the copper, through the natural element, through the silicon in the sand, and through the copper. And it simply, from that moment, it seemed very natural to combine those two. You transit from the natural world, which is, as I'm saying, in pristine form, into the man-made universe, which is becoming more important every day. But still, the connections are there. Without those basic elements that occur in nature in a natural form, there would be no computer industry. There would be no Zoom meeting today. There would be nothing of our reality. There would be no digital art. None of this would have existed. So to realize that actually they are not separated, but they can be combined in by practice, this was a true revelation, I must say, and I'm very happy that it occurred to me. I don't know whether this was epiphany. I think it was rather, I must say, I did get the courage in Tashkeel, because you see that all the artists are working in different fields, and there is no pressure on to be belonging in a certain type of art practice, perhaps the commercial one. You can do whatever you want, and you are given the freedom and encouragement to actually proceed with the craziest ideas you might have. And of course, this freedom and support of the members, they gave me the courage to actually, go ahead and do it. And I say, okay, I would like to proceed with this project. We'll see where it leads to. And I've never been happier.
It almost feels like the way your practice evolved. There are so many similarities with like how nature functions. There's there's a process and cycles, and then things just come into being, which is really beautiful. Now,
Yes.
Jamal,
sorry.
If I can ask you the same question, could you tell us a bit more about the role nature plays in your practice and how you came to that, or if there was a moment, kind of an aha moment where you realized this subject, not to say we're separate from nature, this is something else I want to talk to you about, but kind of like either aha moment or kind of a slow revelation maybe.
Actually, it all started with my interest in Islamic art. Mm-hmm. As a graphic designer, practicing for many years, and it was mostly like my interest in the patterns. At the beginning, I looked at things superficially, okay? I was more, I wanted, I loved the beauty and the ornamentation. I didn't look at history much. This is like at the very beginning, like too many years ago. And living in this region and understanding what appeals and what doesn't appeal in graphic design, and understanding the whole Islamic art ornamentation, you know, not understanding, like becoming too familiar with it. I wanted to dig deeper. I wanted to understand more why this form and why not this form, why, what is this pattern, where this pattern was made. So I started teaching myself history of Islamic art. And it became, and it is still a passion for me. What I found that I was actually looking for is kind of a nostalgia. I was looking for something that when things were perfect, okay? And it was that gold period during the Umayyad time and the Abbasid time. So for me, this is like being a graphic designer, like a perfect design, perfect time for doing perfect things. What also came along is the fact, the feel of nostalgia for a perfect environment, okay? A space where beauty and harmony also has to do with the fact that I'm Lebanese and I lived 15 years of war. So my childhood was actually chaotic. Having, again, sorry, I have to be personal, but I had, during my childhood, it was always like having to jump from one place to the other, hiding from what's ever happening around, you know, politically and the war and everything. So in my head, I used to create this perfect space where I could escape, you know, this perfect garden, and this is before graphic design, but what I'm saying is I found the link for that perfection, this beauty, okay, in my head when I was a child in a different way, yani. So I'll tell you an example. We say in Arabic, جنيني. جنيني, this is a term in Arabic, which is a mini garden. So mini heaven, because Jannah is heaven, Jnaina is a mini heaven. So in my country, we didn't have these spaces. We didn't have these spaces where we used to just play in the garden, okay? We had these spaces, these little heaven on our balconies in Lebanon. So I remember very well my parents having their coffee at the balcony in their little heaven. You know what I mean? It wasn't really heaven. It was just a matter of having this perfect space, this bliss of a moment. You know what I mean? So, so this whole idea of garden and nature and everything, it's only a place where things just go right, okay? It's peaceful, it's nice, it's beautiful with its chaos, okay? And as human being, we always want to create this ideal place in nature. And this is when I started exploring the idea of heaven in my graphic design. And this is where I came to creating my first solo show, where I wanted to talk about my personal heaven, because nobody have seen heaven. So each one of us has his own personal image of heaven. But then afterwards, I became more, because when I was doing the research, I realized that I am more of inclined to wanting to know more about botany. I started searching, wanting to understand in the Quran, in the Holy Quran, what were the plants that were mostly
mentioned.
Like it's just today, I just found out about a tree. Just today that it's mentioned in the Quran, and today since the morning I'm crazy searching this tree, and even spoke to someone who owns a nursery. I want to go get to understand more, to touch it, okay? Because as human, we want to reach this heaven, okay? It's kind of like your ultimate dream. Maybe as a spiritual human myself.
Absolutely.
Now,
It's in Islam, my own practice actually is a lot about the garden as well. So whatever you're saying is resonating so much, because it's garden as, you know, one interpretation of it is heaven. Another one is also, you know, a spiritual terrain that's within us, something sacred, something nourishing.
It's a utopia. It's a utopia. And from my search and everything, you know, I have kind of, I am chaotic in my mind, okay? So I'm like a garden in my mind. Do you know what I mean? So I jump here, then I jump there, then I start this, then I do that, you know? But all I'm looking for is beauty, because I'm a very spiritual person and I like to glorify Allah in a way, you know what I mean? So beauty is a way to glorify him. So even you looked at Islamic art, the way they glorified Allah is with all this workmanship in the details, and this is like you cannot be blind. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's kind of the finding that perfect design, like exaltation and perfection, to kind of pay homage to God and also to everything He's created. So
so I started researching even to understanding motifs. Why they use that flower? Why didn't you? I'm talking about Islamic art, and it became my thematic. It's not that I decided one day to do it. It's the idea that it's the fact that I've always looked for that beautiful space, because in my mind, being a child who lived 15 years before, I always looked for that
safe
peaceful place. Okay?
Yeah.
Now I enjoy being a horticulturist. I want to call myself like this. I feel like maybe a title for me on it. Like I stopped having a business card for 5 years now. Being a graphic designer, worked for 20 years, I stopped having a business card because I felt like the business card, what is it going to say about me? You know, if I tell them I'm a horticulturist, they're going to say, what? A botanist, what? You know? I love this. And it's funny that initially at school, I wanted to learn chemistry, and actually more than this, because of the war, because I wasn't able to do my second, there's steps you do to get to university in Paris. My brother was studying there back then. I wanted to do chimie du parfum, which is perfume chemistry. Mm-hmm. My dream was to go be in a lab in Grasse, okay, where they do the most beautiful perfumes, okay. So now I find myself, I enjoy reading chemistry. I enjoy reading scientific articles, mm-hmm. And now I'm more interested, actually, the past few years, I'm interested with the botany that exists in Lebanon and what's happening to the environment in Lebanon and how this is being affected with everything happening. So it's a whole new world that somehow it was actually meant to become a fabric. You know, it's for me how I started, what I felt, all of this. So everything became a theme for me. Everything around nature.
Sorry, that brings me to my second question, maybe, which is more tied to our current reality. Because obviously, whatever the reason, one of the reasons for the pandemic happened is how we interact with nature, which brought on, you know, climate change and loss of habitat and overconsumption and over travel and all of those things. So I was curious to ask you, maybe Goshi you first and then Jamal, has your relationship, or not relationship, how you relate to nature now has been affected by the pandemic and the lockdown? Because I've been seeing a lot of conversations around the fact that for most of us until now, maybe we didn't consider ourselves to be part of nature. It was almost like we're humans and that's nature, where actually we are part of it, but we didn't treat it as we are part of nature. There was kind of a separation and taking it for granted and using it. But it seems to be like there is a lot of people are finding solace, and everyone is planting things at home. Everyone's houses are full of plants. People are more conscious of what they consume or how they want to consume. So I was curious to hear maybe a little bit from both of you, if the way you're relating, or like, has the pandemic affected how you look at nature, and maybe how you're looking at it in your practice as well a little bit?
Yes and no. In my case, obviously, I did enjoy the respite that we have been given from pollution, from the noise, especially in Dubai when there is so much building activity going on. So that stop has been a welcome change in a way. On the other hand, I must say that my relation to nature and how I view nature is seen in reasonably large scales, because if you look at nature in a geological time, you are talking about millions of years, you are talking about billions of years, you are talking about extremely slow crawling changes. So 3 months, 4 months of human beings slowing down is almost insignificant. That said, perhaps you have a little bit more time to think about time. We always, when we go to the desert, we always look around and we think this is timeless. Nothing, it's like must have been here for thousands of years, for millions of years. It feels eternal, but nothing is eternal in nature. And perhaps one thing that I did spend some time thinking about is that also humanity, population of, so our human population may also not be so eternal as we think. We are extremely vulnerable. This being from disease of this nature, this is only a fraction of our threat. But in the geologic time, there will be lots of other changes that will happen. The changes of climate have been happening in the past, and they will happen, and they continue to happen all the time. I think it's a wrong idea to think that this short slowdown will actually affect, in a global scale, in the long term, will affect humanity's future. I think if we want to think about saving the planet and nature, we would have to take different steps. I don't know what these steps would be, but slowing down is not one of them. It's a population in its core is a threat for the environment. What I think is very important, though, is for a lot of people to realize that consumer behavior, like excessive consumerism, is a definite threat, because you go through all the materials. This, of course, usually are natural materials. You are overusing the resources that are available to us. So in this sense, I think it's very good to know that perhaps we don't need all that many things to be happy. Perhaps we don't need the choice that is hundreds of products. Perhaps a little bit less would have been sufficient. The question is, do we want to continue being conscious and less and consume less?
Has this also affected maybe of how you think about materials you use or what you want to use? if there are things you're not comfortable using anymore, or
I have been for the past 10 years I have been saving beautiful electronics, which I'm calling beautiful electronics, because I find them extremely elegant in terms of the way they look. I don't think about what they were doing in their previous life as electronics. So this is a perfect time for me in a way to recycle those materials, which I'm doing. I'm using copper, I'm using natural materials, recycled cables, parts of computer screens. This is all being recycled, given a new form and a new life. So in a way, I do not use materials that have not been created. I'm trying to be recycling what's already there, and just give those materials a different lease on life. And of course transport them, since this is the core of my practice. I want to transport those natural materials like copper or wires containing it into the different world, move it from the virtual world to the natural world, where we all can enjoy and perhaps reflect on on time and the physical structures of our reality. That's basically how I look at art in general. Give an in-depth moment, think about time, think about the passing. Don't think that that this time will last forever. But on the other hand, nothing is permanent. We should also enjoy and embrace the moments that we have in our life. Enjoy the moments when we walk in nature. We enjoy being in the desert, in open spaces, things that are scarce. So affirmation of living in a day-to-day should result from looking at life and the passing of time in this geological scale. This is the core of my practice.
That's really beautiful. Thank you, Ghosha. And Jamal, I just noticed we're running a bit over time, so maybe I'll ask you the same question and then I will bid you goodbye for the time being.
Okay.
Could you tell us how...
Honestly, I didn't think much like Ghosha did about what's happening now, because I think we're still in it. So it's not ended. And I think every day something new is going to come up, and we have to learn how to deal and how to heal. Okay.
Has that seeped into your practice, this idea of kind of adapting every day and healing?
Yes. That's why I'm very living in the today and understanding what is today, now, what is now. I'm not thinking about anything, because I'm not the one who's going to think about the future. My kids will. I'm not going to be the change. I know that it's not me who's going to make the change. When Ghosha and I, we have the same age of our kids, and I know very well that they are the one who's going to go with the technology and who's going to, and this pandemic has affected them in a way. They started looking at things differently. They matured with this experience, okay? As an artist myself, I try to ground myself as much as possible in this time. And I started thinking about now, today, how is it happening in my life first? Yeah, because every human think about themselves first, and how you can spread it around you in a smaller scale, not like our kids. I think our kids will be doing the bigger scale. For me, it's a small scale. So yes, it affected me. I became more grounded. I became, I look at things more. I keep doing whatever I was doing before. I'm still doing it. Nothing has changed, because I was doing the right thing before. the way I live and the way I consume and all of this, it did not change for me. I'm still the same. As an art, as what I'm doing, actually, I've taken myself into something that I don't want to really reveal now, but I am working on very hard to understand, since I am here, what I thought about. I am here, I am stuck here. I don't know for how long. When I say stuck, because this is not my country, I can't go back to my country. So I'm gonna consider now Dubai my place, as if I'm gonna live here for the next 100 years. And I'm exploring the native things about it, okay? Nature and the environment, and I'm doing something about it because I want to have some kind of a message later on about Dubai, you know? But that's it. I leave my kids, they will be changing the world. I'm not doing that. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing both your projects. They sound really, really interesting. And I hope seeing you both in person very soon. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.